Hi, my name is Simon Locke. I'm at the IPR and Prime Research Strategic Corporate Communication and Research Conference, and I'm delighted to be with Clay McConnell, Head of Communications for Airbus Americas.
Good to see you, Simon.
Thank you very much indeed. So, first question I really have for you is, how do companies, or should companies think about preparing themselves for potentially being the object of a tweet from the president?
Well, I like to think of this situation as not unlike any crisis that a company may find itself in. You go into work on a certain day with a plan for what you're going to do that day, perhaps working on your budget or doing some messaging strategy or whatever, and then something out of the blue happens and it really changes the course of your day. That's not the time, obviously, to begin thinking about what it is that you should do. So sort of good standard practices of crisis planning and preparedness certainly are in order here. In the case of something having to do with the new administration and a tweet or some messaging that might put your company very much in the spotlight, you should really do some thinking about what are the areas of vulnerability for your company. For instance, are you a manufacturer that is looking at the possibility of offshoring some jobs or reducing jobs in the U.S.? If so, then it's really important for you to consider the sort of story that you have to tell, to really articulate and prepare in advance your rationale, because if you're called into question, or your company's actions are called into question, you're going to need to explain this. You're going to need to explain it very quickly, because it's important to get out in the same sort of news cycle. You're going to have to do it concisely, because it's important to have a message that is sort of digestible by your audience. And you're going to have to do it in a way that is consistent with your brand values.
In an increasingly global marketplace, and you're clearly a very a global company, how should companies be thinking about messaging?
Well, messaging in a global context is really quite challenging because, for instance, for a company like Airbus, we have tremendous manufacturing presence here in the U.S. And a tremendous supplier base. We support more than 250,000 U.S. jobs. Those are some messages that are very well aligned with some of the emphases of not only this administration, but certainly sort of the U.S. administrations for a number of years. Those messages play very well in the U.S., and that storytelling happens to be very true and very accurate. Now, at a time when there are some, shall we say, difficulties in relations between perhaps the new administration and other countries, like, say, Mexico, talking about our strong presence in the U.S., in fact, might be something that is seen as a little bit of a negative in other parts of the world. So we have to really consider all audiences in terms of how we're messaging and adjust accordingly. Obviously, we're not going to look to not be true to our values and true to our actions and the stories that we have to tell about the work that we're doing, but we certainly want to bear in mind that consumers of those messages are not confined within any one country's borders. They're truly global in nature.
This conference is focused on research and analytics to some extent. And my last question, is there a role for research and analytics when it comes to evaluating communications risks that you need to manage for?
Absolutely. I think any company that doesn't go to school on the experiences of other companies, whether they be in their same business sort of space, market space, or another, is really doing so at great peril. So, in a sense, we have a plethora of opportunities to see what other companies have done, what other companies have been successful doing with regard to sort of engaging with the president, finding common ground in certain areas, and where they perhaps have made mistakes and have been forced to do things to sort of retract or change course because they didn't handle it in the best way. So any company that is not really using research to take a look at the experiences of other companies and what the effects of those companies' communications activities and actions have taken really are making mistakes.
Okay, thanks very much indeed.
Pleasure.